Welcome to this Eden Tree TV special feature on the essentials of supporting an online learning community. No one needs to be sold on the idea of learning through social interaction. The issue is that a lot of people aren't sure of the best way of accomplishing this online. The advancements made in social media in the last few years have brought with them even greater possibilities for learners to connect, share and collaborate. But on the flip side of this, if someone is trying to put together a community for the first time, it can be a bit overwhelming. Some feel a bit like this chap. Where to start, what tools to pick, what is appropriate support for a learning community online, and most importantly, how do you ensure a rich learning experience? But before we go any further, let's establish what it is we mean when we talk about a learning community. The word community is familiar to all of us, but digital technology has changed the parameters and reshaped the concept away from geographical considerations to one of relationships and shared interests. So for us, a learning community is a group of people with a common interest in learning, innovating and exploring a particular subject or topic, and the emphasis is on collaborative discovery and understanding, and knowledge creation. So it's about progressing the understanding and capability of a group, not just an individual. Now, the term learning community is often used to describe cohorts taking part in a more formalised learning experience, such as a course or a development programme. However, we shouldn't limit the term to this. A group of individuals involved in a collective effort of understanding is a learning community. Now, a question some might have at this point is why? Why should we bother to build a community around learners? For years, some have learned without any real interaction. They've read books or sat passively listening to conference speakers or tutors. But from our perspective, we would say, where's the fun in that? Or in trying to recreate a similar model online? We very much take the view that the most effective learning happens through social interaction, asking questions, sharing experiences, and working collaboratively. And creating a space online to allow these exchanges to happen is really at the heart of creating a successful learning community. But if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed, forget about all the elements flying around the chap's head earlier and think about this from a slightly different perspective. In cooking, you start off with an empty pot to which you add ingredients. The ingredients you add will be dependent on what it is you're trying to make and what your particular taste is, etc. However, there are usually stock ingredients that are the core of a particular recipe. So we'd like to share with you what we think are the core ingredients for supporting a learning community. Ingredient 1 then is a central space. Now just think about some of the most successful TV programmes of recent years. Frasier, Sex and the City, Friends. In each of these, no matter what adventures or scrapes the characters get into, there's always a regular central place where they frequently get together. Now this might sound like a frivolous analogy, but if you think about the makeup of these situations, they provide a comfortable, safe environment where the characters feel they can be themselves. They're structured and formed to the proceedings, created either by personal circumstances, such as the characters arranging meeting times, or by the logistics of the location. They regularly step outside the community space and come back to it with stories of their day or experiences which they freely share, and problems are solved, issues debated, plans are made, and support is given through the group members interacting with each other. And we think that's a fairly good model on which to try and replicate as the hub of your community. So our first ingredient is to create a space where people can meet, easily navigate, get information, and collaborate and share. And there are various ways to do this. There is dedicated software out there that allows you to build and create virtual learning spaces, and 3 of the most popular of these are Moodle, Blackboard and Bloomfire. Now each come with their own considerations for use. Certainly one consideration to think about is that many of your learners will have been unlikely to have used these environments before, so you'll have to factor in some time at the start of a formal course or create support resources for more fluid communities so that learners can actually get to grips with the functions and features of the space. Because of this, more and more learning professionals are building their communities on spaces that are familiar to learners, and a good example of this is Facebook. Now many dismiss Facebook as a legitimate learning space because they can't separate it from the informal friends networking side. However, it has many of the components needed for running a learning community. Profiles can be created to tell people about each other, links, photographs and videos can be shared, and discussion boards can be set up. It won't be the most technically sophisticated learning community in the world, but it's one that a lot of learners will be instantly familiar with and comfortable navigating. Now the point of mentioning Facebook particularly is not to say that everyone should set up their community on it. It, like every other tool, won't suit everyone in every circumstance. The point is you don't necessarily have to invest in costly software or have the support of IT departments to implement a community space. If created on easily maintained and easily navigated spaces, learners are far more likely to be comfortable on the environment and return to it. Our second ingredient is profiles. Might sound like quite a minor requirement, but in a social situation it's important to get to know the people you're working with. And online, a very effective way of doing that is to encourage members to compile a profile that tells everyone else a little bit about them. Think about when someone retweets you on Twitter, or someone's looked at your profile or replied to one of your posts on LinkedIn. The first thing many of us will do is to check the profile of that person. By finding out a bit about them, you can discover common ground and explore opportunities to work together. Profiles create a greater sense of where the community's strengths are and where its interests lie. Some of the things to include are personal details, a photograph, employment details, professional interests, and links to a learner's LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or blog page. Another fun way is to ask learners to record a video introduction and post this on YouTube. The key learning point here is that you're helping people to build tangible relationships with each other. Okay, our third ingredient is to make sure that there are some kind of guidelines to help ensure that the community functions well. By guidelines, we're not talking about a list of rules and regulations, and those not following them will be sent to the doghouse. But many of your learners may not have actively contributed to an online community before, and may be slightly unsure of how to participate. A very good way of helping people to feel comfortable in their online surroundings is to have an initial activity in which the community collaborate on a set of guidelines, usually on a wiki or a discussion board. It's very clear that this is not a list of do's and don'ts, but a set of principles for getting the most out of the community. And these might include participation, take part in activities, swap stories, share information freely, trust, learners need a safe environment to experiment, make mistakes that can be learned from, ask questions and check understanding, respect. Often one of the great elements of a community is the diverse mix of people with different perspectives, ideas and backgrounds. Unless the purpose of a contribution is to disrupt or antagonize, then it's a valid one. Everyone in a community deserves to be listened to. And purpose. Have a shared sense of understanding regarding what everyone is trying to achieve in the community. Ask your learners to share expectations and areas of interest. And it's also worth pointing out that, while focus is important, a certain amount of off-topic banter will happen. Pets, for instance, seem to be a fairly common off-topic conversation, and that's fine, it's all part of the relationship building process. So long as the pet chat, or other sources of off-topic behaviour, don't drown out the learning goals, then a little levity should be encouraged. It's often just a case of applying some common sense. Our next ingredient is activities. The burst of social tools and applications over the last few years means that there is potential to be really creative online and build truly dynamic learning experiences through activities. However, similar to the point made earlier about the environment you pick, the activities and the tools that we run on should support the learning and performance outcomes and not vice versa. Additionally, the principles of good instructional design are equally as valid in online environments. Is the activity going to enhance and aid the learning experience in a meaningful and purposeful way? You may be using software or applications that have activities built in, but experiment is the key here. Try out different tools to see which ones get the learning across most effectively, and obviously it's best to do this before introducing it to the community. One of the great things about running your community online is that your members can often be flexible in how they participate in an activity. One of the most popular activities on online communities is conversation on a discussion board. Social tools, most of them free, mean that a text response is not the only option anymore. We can see some great free communication tools here. So rather than writing about how they performed a task or function, a learner can now choose to make a screencast of what they did using a screencast tool like Screener, narrate an explanation and upload it as a file on SoundCloud, make a presentation of the steps with explanations and put it onto SlideShare, or create a video and broadcast it on YouTube. And these are just a few examples of what is possible. If you have an idea for an activity but you don't have the software to run it, we would encourage everyone to dig around Google or your browser of choice for a free tool, because often there is one. However, while some experimentation is encouraged, don't get too carried away. We've come across activities that were obviously included because the facilitator or tutor had got a new toy and wanted to try it out, and that was the focus, rather than creating the conditions for effective learning. The focus needs to be on the purpose of the activity, not the tool. For example, a wiki is a great resource for people to work on a glossary of terms over time, but the focus here is not let's run an activity on a wiki, it's let's build a glossary, and a wiki is the best tool to help us to do this. Quite often in our enthusiasm to embrace new tools and new ways of doing things, we forget about some of the staples of learning, one of which is reflection. There are times when things only truly make sense once they're reflected upon. Encouraging community members to keep a blog, perhaps using Blogger or WordPress, is a great way to encourage this reflection, and even better, they may choose to leave it open for others to look at and to leave comments on. That way others can learn from their experiences, and also the blogger gets some constructive input. One last point about activities is that unless they have an immediate call to action, you will probably have to prompt learners to use them. It's not enough to give learners a discussion board and say, go discuss. Create reasons for them to go there. Share links, start discussions, ask for advice and propose conundrums. Once the ball starts rolling, you can take more of a back seat, but you'll probably need to do a bit of start-up encouraging. Okay, moving on, the fifth ingredient for our community recipe is help. Now, we've all had this moment, even if we're fairly IT savvy. If you're running a community online, you need to give quite a bit of thought about how you're going to help your learners. Anticipate questions in advance and have answers available to them on the main community space, for example as an FAQ or help guides. If possible, ask your learners to do any technical setup before a formal start date and get back to you with any queries. Often in successful communities, these kinds of issues are self-managed by the learners. If someone has an issue, they'll ask their fellow learners for help, and they in turn post their experience of sorting out the problem for others to benefit from. But you should always make yourself visible on the community space by way of contact details so learners can find you if they need you. If learners are finding the environment difficult to use and are getting no help in overcoming these difficulties, they are more likely to become frustrated, demotivated, or even leave. Getting to grips with technology that is new or even alien to them can be a challenge for some, so do be on hand to offer all the support that you can. Okay, finally, here's our sixth and last ingredient. Encourage the outside in. There is very little to be gained by taking an insular approach to your community. Some will argue for reasons of security and privacy, and sometimes these will be valid. However, in the vast majority of cases, there is no point in working in silos or isolated groups. By taking a more open approach to the community, you create the conditions for collective intelligence to grow. Now, you don't have to throw your community gates open to absolutely everyone, but you will see tremendous benefits if you encourage your learners to discuss their learning outside of the community and bring the fruits of these discussions back into the community space. So do get them to mingle. Social media tools put us in a fantastic position to tap into individuals, groups and networks in a quick and easy way that wasn't possible before. Exploit these possibilities by encouraging community members to tweet questions outside of the community or to start discussions on LinkedIn about your learning goals and your findings. Not only will you, your community and its members prosper as a result, but those outside of the community will also benefit positively. This culture of sharing is very much in the spirit of community and social learning. Give something to the wider world and you'll get it back in spades. Okay, so that's the last ingredient then on the recipe. So our 6 essentials for an online learning community are: create a central space, build member profiles, produce guidelines collaboratively, build in activities, offer appropriate and timely help, and encourage the outside in. Well, we hope you found that useful, and if you did, we hope you'll allow us a shameless plug here. If you would like a free trial to EdenTree, the essential online resource for L&D, HR and OD professionals, you can contact us at edentree.co.uk or call us on 0845 22 33 002. But in the meantime, thanks for watching.